The second week of Dragonsoul raid testing on the PTR. News about Raid Finder, which we've already spoke about, so we're not going to go into that again today. Next, coming from the World event with a pretty decent item level and a bit of a hint at what the Elemental dungeons are going to be like. So the second round of Inferno dungeons or Protocol dungeons or whatever you want to call them. Got quite a bit that I want to talk about, but before I do, be sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. If you're leveling on literally any version of World of Warcraft and you want the fastest way to level, then check out Rested XP in the pinned comment and in the description. It is an affiliate link, so any guide you buy actually goes towards supporting the channel, so thanks for that. Let's get into it. Blizzard originally said we're only getting 2 rounds of PTR testing for Dragonsoul. That was last weekend and the weekend just gone. Is that enough? I would probably say so. I saw 6 of the bosses on Heroic and 2 on Normal, and we're going to get into a little bit of a blunder and really a watch out on live. Because only being able to see 6 of the bosses on Heroic wasn't by choice. We actually wanted to see the 7th boss on Heroic, but we messed up bad, and we'll get to that soon. So first of all, how was week 2 compared to week 1? And what have you got to look forward to, assuming that we do not get any more tuning or changes or another round of PTR, specifically for Dragonsoul. But I'm doubling down on my original stance from the video last week, where I said it is actually a challenge. It's a really good raid, most of the bosses are actually quite interesting, but it is very challenging. And for those of you that didn't see that video, the reason for it being particularly challenging is because we're going to get a buff over the course of the weeks, which just make us stronger. Originally, it was actually to make the bosses weaker, but thanks to data mining, it kind of looks like it's actually going to be the other way round this time, which is kind of fine because it's much more interesting for you to feel stronger than the bosses just to die faster and your numbers don't get inflated by this massive damage buff. So actually, I'm all for this change, assuming that it does go ahead. So yes, in just Firelands gear, this is going to challenge the vast majority of guilds, especially if you had practically no PTR testing, because if you only just looked at a few of the bosses, like some of these bosses took us a serious amount of wipes to actually get down. Warlord Zonos? Yes, definitely Warlord Zonos. This boss is just more irritating than difficult, in my opinion, but once you actually start to get the mechanics down and you understand it, you have to really work out what's going to work for the composition or the team that you're running. Now again, this is all 10-man Heroic only. I've got no interest in doing 25-man Heroic during Cataclysm. We'll save that for MOP. But in 10-man Heroic, your comp is going to matter on almost every single one of these fights. Now, I did kind of give my thoughts on each boss last week, at least the first 4, so my thoughts on those 4 haven't really changed, except for the fact that Hagara has now been fixed. Mostly. Hagara in the first round of PTR practically had half of the mechanics removed, whereas they were all put back in and Hagara was the appropriate level of difficulty. The only thing that was missing was a visual bug. You couldn't see the big dome that's meant to be surrounding the whole middle of the platform during the frost phase, but it was actually there. It was just visual, you couldn't see it, which is absolutely fine because it meant you still had to do all the mechanics properly, or in my case, not so properly. But for a real quick recap on the 3 bosses and anything that we changed from week 1 to week 2, on Morchok, I did mention in the last video that actually if you want a really easy kill, in 10-man specifically, you 4-heal it, so you have 2 healers on each side. In the first kill that you saw last week, we did use 2 healers, and we just had 1 healer on each side, and it was absolutely fine. But I tell you what, actually using 2 healers on each side makes the fight completely face roll. The enrage timer, assuming you've got reasonable DPS, is of absolutely zero concern. So if you just want to make it safe, and while people will be like, oh my god, bro, you need to use 4 healers to get that boss down, I don't care. Yeah, I'll use 4 healers just to make it nice and safe for week 1, so we can just carry on and just get to the next bosses as quickly as possible without something dodgy happening to one of the healers on a pull and then it's a wipe, and then it would have just been quicker to use 4 healers. So yeah, within your comp, if you've got the access to 4 healers, I would recommend it personally. On your Saj, we actually dropped a healer. Last week we used 3, this week we used 2, and I'm pretty sure that actually just comes down to being a lot more familiar with the fight and being able to handle the mechanics a lot better. But outside of that, really, there's only one hard ooze combination, which when all the oozes come in and you have to kill one, when you get red, yellow, green, black, that is quite literally the worst one. If your 2 healers with raid cooldowns can get past that combination, they'll be fine for the rest of the fight. Zonos is an absolute nightmare. Quite honestly, everybody that I've spoken to when I've been streaming over on kick.com/Scottejaye, just get a little plug in there, you know. Everybody's been saying the same thing, and the majority of their wipes during the PTR weekend came from this boss, which really hindered their ability to be able to get any further through, to get to some of the other bosses that would cause lots of wipes, like Spine. Overall, this is one of those fights again where you have to just do what works for your comp and no one else's. Many people would bounce the ball 7 times to kill the boss. We was only bouncing it 5. A lot of people will use an individual soaker like a Fire Mage to move out and it cauterizes. We didn't do that. We used 2 groups. So there's a lot of things that you can do differently, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that what we did was right or what somebody else did was wrong. You've kind of just got to do what works for your group. And we just found for our group, timing-wise and the output that we've actually got damage-wise, just doing 5 bounces made it really safe, and we came up with a bit of a, not cheesy strat at the end, but when we go into our final phase 1, we just kite one ball really, really far away with one of our healers, and that buys us loads of time to just lust, and all of us are just stood there pumping without anything really happening at all. But then we only spend a really short amount of time in the final Black Blood phase before it enrages, so either we kill him before then or he kills us. But yeah, overall, Zonos is just a pain. Fortunately, when you get past him and you're doing Hagara that we've already discussed, for a couple of bosses it kind of eases up a little bit. So Hagara is very comfortable. Once you get to grips with the ice phase and how you're going to deal with it, and the lightning phase and how you're going to deal with that, which if you're interested, the way we dealt with it was we just had 2 groups running around the outside, one clockwise, one anti-clockwise during the lightning phase. This is to get the pylons all lit up. And quite honestly, if you can do that, the rest of the fight is pretty simple. Because the frost phase, you're just dancing in and out when the wall comes past and killing each frost pylon one at a time. And then the normal sort of phase where you've just got some ice lances coming in and stuff, you just need to block them and take a few stacks each. It's really not that difficult. I would actually say the thing that most people will struggle with on this fight is probably the lightning phase over all else. But you get that down and you're laughing. I was actually quite worried about Old Traxian, and I'm also quite annoyed at myself because I was a bit stupid and I didn't actually record Old Traxian while we was killing him in clean footage, so unfortunately I've only got the stream footage, but it didn't take that many pulls at all. Like literally, it was probably the fewest pulls out of any of the bosses outside of Morchok, because really there's not that much going on. You've got an extra action button that you need to press when you've got fade in light and there's less than 5 seconds on it. You need to assign 3 sets of 2 people to basically stay outside to soak a really big hit, and honestly that's pretty much it. The rest is on your healers just to make sure no one dies. It's actually a super comfortable fight on 10-man, but I have heard on 25-man it is an absolute nightmare. So I would say it's probably fairly unanimous that 25-man is a lot harder than 10-man on this boss specifically, because I've heard terrible things about it on 25, whereas in 10 I was like, wow, is this it? Now we're going to get to where our raid group made a really, really big oopsie. Warmaster Blackhorn. Now we actually had quite a lot of wipes on this boss to once again work out what works best for our group, rather than what everybody's saying you should do to handle this boss. So slowly throughout the day we was getting down exactly how we want to handle it, and then everything clicked and we kind of just got it. The first phase where you've got to keep the ship alive while killing drakes, while moving out of charges, while soaking big explosions, and also having people assigned to soak in the smaller explosions so your boat don't blow up, and killing sappers. There's quite a lot going on, and I would say phase 1 in terms of organization is the hardest part. And our raid group all kind of agreed that that is exactly, the main thing that we want to get down is that first phase. Once we get to Blackhorn and we have to nuke the dragon, so she flies off and then we've just got Blackhorn himself, we know the tank's going to be getting absolutely hammered, so we're going to need cooldowns on him. We're going to need raid cooldowns going out as well for the big roar or cry, whatever it does. So we weren't really worried about the second phase. So once we actually got to the second phase a couple of times, got the dragon to fly off, we was happy. We was like, all right, cool. Like, we'll do the rest on live. It doesn't matter. We was kind of running out of time because it was Sunday. There weren't that much time left for raid. So we thought we'll just put it to normal and kill it so we can have as much time as possible progressing on Heroic Spine. Now, this is where you might instantly think, oh dear. But we didn't know. To do Heroic Spine, you have to have done the last 6 on Heroic, and to do Heroic Madness, you have to have done Heroic Spine. So we got no Heroic Spine practice whatsoever, because then we was all so annoyed by it that we just done Spine on normal and Deathwing on normal and called it a night. Which we're not that upset about, because we know we're going to be able to do the first 6 in the first night of launch, and as long as we get Spine and Deathwing down, well, Spine and Madness down, over the next few days, so we get a week 1 clear, that's kind of our goal. Our goal's not to full clear in one night. As long as we do it in 1 week, we're happy. Just so we get maximum loot, obviously, and we have put a lot of time into the PTR, which many guilds wouldn't have. Like, we've sunk 2 full weekends into it. So let that be a word of warning. If you think Blackhorn's a little bit difficult, so for some reason you want to skip it and try and do Spine Heroic, you can't do that. And if you want to try and mix things up and do some on normal, some on heroic, it looks like the only ones you're going to be able to do that with is the first 6. So yeah, we kind of suck. I won't even mention Spine and Madness on normal, because honestly, after doing the heroic bosses, like the first 6 on heroic, Spine and Madness was absolutely face roll. But I've seen the class stacking that's been going on in 25-man groups for Spine, and seeing like 7, 8, 9 mages. Yeah, I think Spine's going to be extremely, extremely hard week 1 for both 10 heroic and 25 heroic. So we'll see how that goes. I'm personally quite scared about it in week 1. And I think we're going to see that parachute down onto the boss's back more than anything else that week. I could have pretty much left this video fully just as how was Dragonsoul week 2. But I want to throw a couple of bits in extra anyway, because they're not going to take that long to talk about. First is the Love is in the Air world event, where you can now queue for the Crown Chemical Company in Random Dungeon Finder. Now, these loot drops have been updated now to give 3, 7, 8 item level necks. The problem is, none of it seems to be working. I'm sure by the time this video goes out, it will be fixed. But I've done it twice so far, and yeah, it's as if the items don't even exist. But what you saw in my kill there, the Winking Eye of Love, should actually be the Spirit Crit Neck, and it's 378 eye level, which is normal Firelands gear. So if you're like re-rolling, or you've got an ult that you want to gear up or something like that, grabbing a 378 eye level neck, pretty good, especially for how long it takes. The other world event I want to mention so briefly is the Lunar Festival. Obviously, that's still running, and I'm actually using it as a way to get my rogue from 84 to 85. My rogue's been sat at 83. Well, it was sat at 83 for literally months. And because the Lunar Festival's on, and obviously there's Joyous Journeys as well, actually just getting all the coordinates and then flying around and just getting all of these to get the achievement and get pretty much a full level of XP, pretty chill, especially if you're just going to watch Netflix or something at the same time. I'll throw that in as a little bonus. But finally, the last thing I want to talk about so you can get out of here is the data mined Signet. Now, Signet of the Wormrest Accord has been found, which summons a Wormrest Defender. Now, if you played back during Wrath of the Lich King, you'll probably remember we had Signet of the Sun Reaver. Now, Signet of the Sun Reaver was added to the Gamma dungeons, and this was what would summon the little Sun Reaver guy to come and give you buffs. So you'd have a unique tank buff, a unique healer buff, and a unique DPS buff as well. So it looks like we're going to be getting some form of buff to counteract the fact that the bosses in the heroics have just got such a ridiculous amount of health and just take so long. Now, whether Blizzard actually add anything else mechanic-wise to any of the bosses, or an affix that goes across the whole instance or all of the instances, I don't know. But I would say at the moment, just looking at that one small piece of information, being a Signet that was data mined, I would say more or less guaranteed we're going to be getting some form of buff that we choose in the dungeons.
While the change in audio might be a little bit jarring, it's going to be worth it, because I've actually found, since the original recording, a lot that hints towards exactly what we're going to be getting in these protocol dungeons, even the fact that they're called Protocol Twilight. So like you can see in the database here, we've got Protocol Twilight dungeons, which, yeah, I mean, that's definitely what they're going to be called. There's things with Twilight Madness, which has got a proc chance of 35%, which is probably going to come from things like Gift of the Red Dragonflight. You've got Gift of the Red, Gift of the Bronze, Gift of the Blue, and Gift of the Green. So actually you've got more than just tank, healer, and DPS. It's probably more like tank, healer, melee DPS, range DPS. So yeah, these are actually starting to look pretty interesting.
But yeah, I've got nothing else to add. Just a little bit of an update for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a bit of a mix of everything, but I felt like I wanted to get a whole mix of everything in so I can get back to making mop videos. If you enjoyed the video, as always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.